These are the best 20 fantasy books that readers like you read this year, so you can absolutely not miss them next year. I ask you both on Instagram, Reddit and YouTube which was your favorite book of the year, and the results amaze me. In the top 20 we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by the same author as the Babel trilogy. This is a story that seems phenomenal. I haven't read it myself. It follows an adult character, an adult woman, and it's a story about pirates, about magical creatures. It seems that it has a plot that will get you hooked from the beginning, and it's the beginning of a series. The story in itself really called me because it seems that we will follow Amina as she is about to embark herself on a mission that it's supposed to be easy peasy, but it turns out that it isn't. It's supposed to be really emotional at times, and I cannot wait to read this. In the top 19 we have Malasan, the Book of the Fallen, and yes, I blended a lot of different books that were mentioned, especially the book 3 and 5 were mentioned, but also a lot of people mentioned book 1, book 7, so there's a little bit of everything. This is a story complex in essence, it's grimdark at its core, and we'll follow this massive cast of characters in this incredibly huge land. It's supposed to be a story that you need to focus a lot of attention to it because things move fast and you need to have a little bit of patience with it, and either you love it or hate it. So I cannot wait to see also where I myself fall into this list. In the top 18 we have Mistborn by Brando Santo. Especially we got books 2 and 3 mentioned so many times, and I am very happy to still see Mistborn within this list and that you guys enjoyed this so much. This is definitely one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, and it is perfect because of the heart magic system that it has, which is fascinating. We will have these characters that are very compelling. It's a heist at its peak and it's phenomenal, but we will also have these very rich characters, this world building that it's phenomenal. The heart magic system, it's to die for. We will have one of the most creative elements here, which is that these different people can ingest metals, and each of these metals will have a different power. So you need to learn a little bit which are these different powers granting these people, and this society is now very sadly leaving under the thumb of this emperor that has been ruling for hundreds of years, and he's very bad news. So people is about to rebel. It has heart-wrenching moments, incredible action scenes, also some very romantic elements here. And the first book, although it's a trilogy, really ends up almost as a standalone. It's really fulfilling in itself, so you can start reading it and discover if it is for you or not. And if you're thinking, oh, those are a lot of books to read, then I'd have something for you. And that leads me to today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of offline classes and members who come together to find inspiration and take the next step in their creative journey. There are a wide variety of topics from which you can select from, ranging from design, productivity, photography, and there are also amazing classes around reading skills, which I am really enjoying it. There's a great community there where I have access to teachers and also students, and we are able to inspire each other, and I am extracting so much out of that. That's been a constant source of inspiration. There's also this learn by doing approach where after you learn something, you need to do something in order to start delivering value and create value from the beginning. Now, I'm obsessed with 2 different classes. The first one, I think you've already noticed, it's around understanding better Notion, which is this free tool that is usually helping me to organize all of my research. And the other one, I'm starting to learn also how to read and comprehend better. So hopefully I can read more and also extract more for you guys next year. If all of these sounds good to you and you think that you can extract some value, go to the link in the description, because the first 500 people that it's able to click it will have 1 month free. So you can create an account and you can start browsing so that you can go and see if this makes sense to you. In the top 17 we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is a book that I read at the beginning of the year, and it's cozy fantasy at its best. Part 2 of this story will be released very soon, and it is cozy fantasy in this very wintry setting, so it's a perfect book to read right now. And it reads adult, but at the same time it has this whimsy, this folklore, and you will be immersed in this story from the beginning, because we will follow this girl Emily, and she is very focused. She really loves her job, and she is really trying to understand what is happening with these fairies. This curiosity is getting her into this Norway-like environment where she will start to learn about this ice kind of fairy, and the story unfolds from there. It's a very curious blend of a sweet story, but it really has some dark scenes, so it's a very great combination. In the top 16 we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a fantasy standalone and it's dark academia at its finest, and it will follow these different characters. It's a story that it's kind of sad and it's very slow, it's very character driven, so you really need to be mindful of that. It's a dark story that will pull the strings of your heart and it will make you feel so many things. It really builds up fairly slowly, so it has a pacing that it's on the lower side, but it is very emotional, and it will make you feel that rage that to me it's very characteristic of this author. And it just talks about topics that are really profound, such as colonialism, racism, and sexism as well. It follows the story of these 4 friends, but we will mainly see the point of view of one of these characters since he is a child, and we will see the journey of these characters getting into Babel, and in here they will learn this magic that is really related to languages, and that in itself it's a very interesting point, because we will see how language it's playing a role in colonializing all the countries, and how these different people it's about to play a role, and you will see how they are torn about this. It's a very, very emotional, really recommend. In the top 15 we have one of my favorite books of this year as well, and that is Empire of the Vampire by J. Christoph. It's a story that I was expecting to hate, and I was very surprised because I loved it. It follows a very similar path to what we can find in The Name of the Wind, and it's a story that follows this very grim setting in which the sun one day stopped shining as bright as it is today, and as a result vampires emerge, and they are not good news. They are really savage, and we will see these back and forth different passages, and the story will be mainly told by this main character as he is interviewed. It's a story full of winter elements as well as savage scenes. It has a pacing that it takes a solid minute to get to it. It took me almost 100 pages or even a little bit more to get into the vibe of the book, because you will see things from the past, from the present, from the future, and these pieces eventually make sense, and they will be very intriguing pieces of the puzzle, but until you get there, it takes a lot. It is wonderful. In the top 14 we have By the Queen of Fantasy, the Farseer trilogy. In here I also blended different books that were mentioned because people really loved it. This is a trilogy that I haven't read myself, and I am starting to love Hob, especially with the Live Ship trilogy. Just read the first book, but it's an author that it has a certain tone to it. It's a very character driven, and usually her pacing it's slow. There's a lot of people that says that not a lot of things happen, but that things happen, if that makes sense. So it's a story that will feel realistic, that will feel heart-wrenching, and in particular this trilogy, it's very well loved because you will absolutely love the main character Fist. In here we have the story of this character that has a very unique power, which is called the Wheat, and it implies that he can talk with animals, but this is not very well seen in the royalty, and once that he gets this new place in royalty, he will need to start to learn all the stuff, and particularly had to be an assassin. In the top 13 we have the Dandelion Dynasty. In particularly we have books 2 and 3 mentioned a lot of times, and this is no wonder, because actually the Dandelion Dynasty, although it's a quartet, it's kind of hyped because especially book 2, The Wall of Storms, it's a story that also reads as historical fiction, and especially book 1 was for me the best one, but I reckon I'm in a minority here. It's a story that will need a little bit of you committing to this, because it has a wide variety of characters, it has a massive story, and it needs you to be in that right set of mindset, because it's a little bit dense, but it's just such a masterpiece, praised so greatly because of the masterfully way in which Ken Liu just unravels this story. There's full of plot twists that you will not see coming. It will follow this land as the different dynasties move forward, and you will follow this event in this history. It is really, really great. I still need to continue with the series, just read book 1 and book 2. In the top 12 we got The Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cahill. This is a story that I really need to get into it. The different books of the series was pitched, and the things that I got from it is that the author just gets better and better and better as the story progresses, but also that it has such an incredible world building. It has dragons, it has this epic high fantasy element, and that the action, it's fantastic. The pacing is supposed to be very fast, and I cannot wait to see this story for myself. In the top 11 we have The Empire of the Wolf by Richard Swan, also one of my favorites this year. Both The Justice of Kings and Tyranny of the Faith was pitched so many times. I'm so happy that this is here. It's a story that reads very different because it talks about necromancy. It talks about characters that are complex. They are very gray, and even your main character, it's not kind of like a good character to follow. It has this great blend of religion, strategy, war. It has this magic system that it's utterly compelling, in which one of the main characters here can talk with the dead death, and they can also command people to tell the truth. And there's a lot of things that revolve around this powerful elden magic. Felt really different to what I was used to read. First book, it's kind of like a mystery in itself, and will be set in this small town that it's really gloomy, and book 2 will move to the city, but it's still the plot and the enemies and the bad one, they are so compelling. Cannot recommend enough. In the top 10, and we're getting properly into the whole of the best books this year, we have Blood of a Bright Haven, which also was one of my favorites this year. This is by Emil Wang, the author of The Sword of Kagan. It's a story that is dark academia at its finest. It is relatively short for what it is, and it is a story that will convey very strong emotions. It will be empowering, but also will talk about colonialism and racism and sexism as well a lot. It will make you reflect, but it won't be the main theme. We'll follow this very great character that, being very ambitious, wanting to be very powerful, was also very interesting. I was utterly fascinated by her mindset. In this world, we also have an amazing magic system, one of my favorites actually. I loved it. And it's this ability of mages to create magic, also like if they were coding, which was the first time that I read something like that, and I was mind blown by it. The society is kind of like surrounded by this dome of magic that the mages have created, because outside there's this terrible thing happening that it's killing people, and our girl is about to become the first woman mage, and she is determined to be the best mage of all and to lead this campaign to expand this dome. And what you will see will, be mind-blowing to you. I loved it. It's very emotional, and I loved it. In the top 9, we have one of my favorite books of last year, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is a standalone that it's super short, you cannot miss it, and it's magical realism at its peak. It's very character driven, and it has a very unique narration style, so either you will love it or either you will hate it, but you will discover that pretty early on within the story. So give it a try, start reading the pages that you can find free in a lot of different places, and see if this is for you, because if you like what you read, you just will fall head over heels with our main character, Piranesi. He finds himself alone in this massive house that is as big as the world, and he is kind of like alone, just with the company of this other person that comes every now and then, and together they're trying to unravel the magic of this house. It's a thriller, it's a mystery, and there are some plot twists that were really incredible, but to me the main thing is the art that Piranesi in itself does and how we follow him. He is so naive, so beautiful, and I really enjoyed it. It's a story that I've gifted to many of my friends, family, and all of them have loved it. It's really low on magic, so it's also a very good book if you are not really used to read a lot of fantasy. Really recommend. In the top 8, a story that I also believe it's perfect to begin into fantasy, we have Dress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sandow. This is the first book in the secret projects of this year, and it is a standalone that it's cozy fantasy. It revolves around the Princess Bride, and it has pirates, it has a beautiful world building and characters that are really naive, that are really funny. It's told under the point of view of Wheat, and that made it for a narration that was very unique in my opinion, because it had this blend of being whimsical, being slightly funny, but also being very adventure-y. It read to me a little bit more young adult, very cozy, very easy to get into it. We will follow this girl, Tress, and she discovers that her love has been kidnapped, and she's like, okay, I will take things for myself and I will go and figure this out. You will see pirates, you will see incredible creatures, and again, it's in everything that you will see in Sandow. There's a magic element here. In this case is that we will have this weird water, and water, it's actually not water, they're kind of like spheres, but if water actually touches this sea-like thing, things will emerge from it. So it is a very interesting Sanderson style, and recommend it. If you're finding this helpful so far, well, you know what to do. In the top 7, a lot of readers like you enjoyed Wheel of Time, especially we see people reading book 3, book 4, a lot of people concluding the series, and this is a story that I'm just in the beginning myself, but I cannot wait to keep reading. What is to say about Wheel of Time? It is a chosen one at its best. It's this quest, but it is also this fight between the good and the evil. We will have this little village characters that are about to find themselves in a very tough situation, and I have not read much, so I cannot say, but the arc of the character is supposed to be one of the most rich that you will read, and it's a story that really a lot of people love. In the top 6, we have The Faithful Fall and the Fallen by John Wayne. This is a story that also was a favorite for me this year. A lot of people mentioned not only malice, but especially valor and wrath within this quartet. It's a story that is really classic fantasy, traditional fantasy, but it has this almost modern element to it. It was phenomenal. It's also this kind of like good versus evil kind of style, Palas, this chosen one. So those are those classic elements, but we will have this wide variety of different characters, this land that is also big, and it's just, it has something. I was really hooked by this story, by the greatness of the characters, how they behave. The pacing of book 1 is a little bit slow at the beginning and then picks up, but I've heard that from book 2 onwards the pacing, it's just, so it's a story that I really want to continue next year. In the top 5, and we are getting serious, we have Jumi and the Nightmare Painter, which also was one of my favorites this year. This is Secret Project number 3 of Sanderson. It's also a standalone. It brings a lot of inspiration from Your Name, the movie, also Final Fantasy X, and it's kind of like a Freaky Friday where we have these two characters that belong to different worlds and that they change. They are the spirit in one's in other bodies, and we will need to figure out the way of living, the way of doing magic, and it is phenomenal. Also the world building here, it's one of the most interesting that I've read from Sanderson, and it's probably one of my favorite ones. And it's that in one of these worlds, everything is surrounded by, you know, darkness, and there's only two neon lines that are coloring things. One it's purple and the other one it's blue, and it was very vivid in my imagination how to picture that. Also this book has incredible illustrations, which also obviously really helped, and the thing that stole the show for me here, it's one of the magic systems. We have Painter, who is able to perform this very important job, which implies that in this world nightmares kind of like come to life, and we have the role of the painters, and they need to face the nightmare and then paint that nightmare, and that nightmare would then disappear. I thought that concept was really fascinating, and in the other hand with Jumi we'll have this magic that's more related to spirits, and it's also very beautiful. I cannot recommend enough. It's very easy to read, it's emotional, it's romantic, it's cozy, but it's also dark, and it got so many good elements for me. I loved it. In the top 4 we have the Greenbone Saga by Fondeley. I'm picturing here Jade City, but a lot of readers like you enjoyed book 2 and book 3 as well. This is a saga that I finalized this year, but I mainly read last year, and it's one of my favorites of all time. It is a story that I thought I was going to absolutely hate because it's been pitched as Godfather but urban fantasy, and those are not two elements that I would say, oh, I really loved this, but I actually did. I absolutely loved it. It's very character driven, and it has a lot of family drama, a lot of strategy. There are some action scenes here and there, but it's not a story that will be mainly following these fighting scenes. So either you really like what you read or you really don't. I think that if you read book 1 and you're not in love with the characters, you won't really enjoy what you will find. These characters are real people to me. I can see it. I've finalized these already a long time ago, and I still see a lot of the scenes, and it's just, there are scenes that I will be forever branded in my mind, and these characters are otherworldly. I love them and hate them, and they're great, all of them, and just phenomenal. In the top 3 we have The Sword of Kagan by Emil Wang. I'm very happy to see this book here. It seems that almost it doesn't matter where I ask, this book almost comes up every time, and this is my favorite standalone of all time. I cannot really recommend this enough. It's a story that if you have not read yet, please do. You will cry like a baby. But it's not only that, you will have a book with incredible action scenes that rival, in my opinion, Brando Sanjo. You will see elemental magic, which is my favorite soft magic system. In this case, it's ice magic, and it has such a deep and profound depiction of the human minds and what does it mean to be a mother and a son, and the marital relationships. It is very profound. I absolutely loved it. There's one character here that has an arc that is one of my favorites of all time as well, and it's a story that at its core it seems very simple, because we will have this land that it's about to be invaded, and these people will need to do their best to stop that invasion. But it's what happens in the cracks of this story what will break your heart and that will steal your mind forever. Give this one a try. It's fascinating beginning to end. Loved it. In the top 2 we have actually my favorite book of this year, and that is The Will of the Many by James Ireland. This is a story that revolves in a military academic setting surrounded in this Roman Empire the setting, and it is just fascinating. It has multiple scenes, in my opinion, too, that will get you obsessed. And it's a story that either if you read now, you will be like, okay, but you will need to reread when book 2 is released next year, because the ending will get you down this rabbit hole. So many things happen that will just blow your mind. It is also a very interesting magic system. In here, we'll have the society that is kind of layered, and we have the most powerful people, and their power is kind of like relates to the power in the levels that it's underneath. And in the lower level is where you have more people. The main character is very well fleshed out, and it really resembles Red Rising, in my opinion, better. A lot of people are picturing this book as being their favorite. So if you have not read it yet, yes, use this moment to just pick it up. And in the top 1, we have Stormlight Archive. A lot of people this year have been enjoying Way of Kings, Words of Radiance. Only just 1 people mentioned Oathbringer, but in my opinion, it's the best one. Fight me for that. And Stormlight is actually my favorite series of all time, and I am so happy to see this here. It belongs here. It's very massive in scope, in characters, in the things that it's trying to achieve. We will have a very profound depiction of the human mind and psychology and mental illnesses as well. All of these different characters are broken in a way, and they are very relatable, I feel. The story in itself, it's kind of like a war between different species that is triggered because the king is killed and chaos happens afterwards. But the reality of these is that you will follow very charismatic characters as they discover this land, as they discover this magic that needs to have these different levels, this different commitment. And there's something unique with Stormlight. It might be that the world it's reached, that everything is detailed, the society, the economy, there's land, the plants, everything. Or it might be how incredible unique the characters are, or it might be the stakes that are very high, or it might be that it's one of the main things in the Cosmere for me and my favorite world. But regardless of what is it that is making Stormlight as good, please, I really recommend you, I'm begging you to give it a try this year if you haven't already. Now, let me know down below which are the books that you enjoyed the most this year, and if there's any of these books that you will also recommend to other readers like you. And thank you so much to my patrons who joined the Ingwardian Society. I am blessed that you're here. Your support means the world to me. Join us if you want to have reading experience, weekly reading challenges, and a monthly book club.